So I love when people kind of break down teams that I'm interested in and like go deep dive into what works. Because we all see, like I think a lot of people, until the second viewing of a game, just follow the ball, right? Not John Harris. John Harris follows the ball, follows the O-lineman, the defensive lineman. The professor joins us here from FootballTakeover.com and, of course, Houston Texans sideline reporter. Hello, Johnny.
Hi, David. How you doing?
That was a weird intro by me. The hello, Johnny. I didn't like it. I felt like that guy on. You ever see Beverly Hills Cop? Serge. I felt like Serge on Beverly Hills Cop.
Serge. Yeah, not to be confused with Berge, who was Bill Belichick's right hand man. Serge, who was he was Balky, right? Wasn't he Balky from
Balky Bartakamos?
Yes.
Perfect Strangers.
Very much so. Yeah, I think I remember that show.
Cousin Larry Appleton.
Yes, very, very well done. What an underrated bad show.
By the way,
good show.
You're really good with like Heisman's from any year I throw at you. I'm good with 1980s and 90s sitcoms that nobody watched. That's kind of my claim to fame.
I mean, listen, the amount of useless knowledge that ends up in our brains for whatever reason is ridiculous. And it was funny because I thought about last week when you were asking me all different Heisman winners. My buddy who grew up in Frisco before Frisco became Frisco, and it was a little country town at that point. And he was country as could be, and we would go someplace at Brown, and he would be like, "Hey, this is my roommate. This is my roommate, John. Hey, watch this. 77 Heisman Trophy winner." I'm like, "Come on, Rock. Like, we don't need to do this. Like, I'm not a party favor, man. I don't have to be answering Heisman Trophy winning questions." But then I'm like, "All right, well, 77 Earl Campbell, Texas." And everybody would be like, "Oh my God, that's so awesome." I'm like, whatever,
Whatevers. Hey, so I love that you did this dive, and I don't want look. I think people need to go to your YouTube page, watch it, like, comment, subscribe, all the stuff we ask you to do with TexAgs. Go become a subscriber to FootballTakeover.com. But kind of give us a preview of what intrigued you so much offensively from what A&M was able to do in just one game against New Mexico.
Well, I feel like there were a few things. Number one, when a new offensive coordinator takes over, especially a guy like Bobby Petrino, who we've seen before, I want to see how he takes his chopped basket. And if you know the show Chopped on Food Network, they give a chef a basket, and it's got gummy bears and beets and cod and sunflower seeds, and you got to make a meal from that. And so I kind of think about, offensive coordinators changing teams, and they look at their basket and go, okay, well, what do we got? And I always feel like Bobby Petrino aces it because he looks at it and goes, okay, well, I got Lamar Jackson. All right, well, I'm going to do this. And then I've got Ryan Mallett, so I'm going to do this. So he opens this basket, and it's like, whoa, man, I got filet mignon receivers here. And I've got, really good potatoes, Connor Wegman quarterback. So I felt like I was curious to see how he would attack and what he would do. And one of the things that really stood out to me the most was, and has been for years with Petrino, like, you have an Achilles heel. He's going to find it. And I felt like New Mexico's Achilles heel was essentially how they were trying to match up with A&M's wide receivers. That, to me, was kind of the biggest thing that stood out. Like, wait a second. You got a tight end out wide. You come out on a 3-by-1, so you got 3 wide receivers to the left, and you got a receiver to the right. You're going to blitz or use some sort of pressure, and then you're going to leave a tight end and have a corner cover the tight end. Meanwhile, inside, you got Noah Thomas, and you're going to line up a safety against Noah Thomas. Well, you need to take advantage of that all day long. And I've seen a lot of offensive coordinators, they don't. They get that advantage, and then they don't take advantage of it. And not only did they do it once, they did it multiple times. The other thing is, that's one mistake I felt like New Mexico made, and A&M took advantage of it. The other mistake, the Evan Stewart touchdown, if you watch it closely, you're kind of like, wait a second, what are they doing? But what A&M did was brilliant on that play because they ran an unbalanced set. So they moved the tight end over to the left side with 3 receivers on that side. Well, New Mexico never adjusted because there's no eligible receiver on the other side. Meanwhile, you got a corner sitting down there as if he's playing a tight end on that side. Well, there's no eligible receiver over there. New Mexico had to shift that entire coverage. It didn't. It decided to continue to play man coverage. And all of a sudden, you got Evan Stewart on a flat foot safety 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. I mean, that's a side adjust you don't even have to say anything. You just sight adjust and you look in the middle of the field. And as I said, when I broke down the play, I guarantee you when Connor got to his final step and he looked back, he got a pre-snap read that said there's no safety back there. When he got to his final step and saw no safety, he had to be just chuckling. Like, this is easy. I just got to throw it out there. And he put a little too much air under it to almost allow the safety back in, but he had to make sure he gave Stewart an opportunity to catch it. But those are some of the breakdowns that New Mexico had, but A&M took advantage of it. And that's what I'd love to see. I know it was fantastic, but if you look at where Noah made every single one of his catches, his touchdown catches in particular, they were all in the number 2 position or even the number 3 position, running slot fades against safeties. Now, if you're watching that and you're Miami, you're like, okay, well, we're not going to let that big guy match up on a corner. Okay, well, who are you putting your safety on? That to me is the thing for A&M this year. Yes, I want them to run the ball. I want them to be physical. We want all that. But how do you match up when they go 10 personnel? When they put Anais with Moose and Stewart and Thomas all on the field at the same time, which I don't know if they did that the other night, and maybe they're saving that for Miami. But when they put all 4 of them on the field, that means either you have to match with 4 corners or your safety has to cover and cover well. And if you don't have a good cover safety, then all of a sudden you're going to get exploited because one of those guys is going to win a man-to-man matchup. Now, you can play a bunch of zone and sit back and let them dink and dunk, and I think they will. I think Connor absolutely will because all these guys are really good after the catch too. So you kind of have to pick your poison against the 10 personnel they can throw at you. And then if you want to play 4 corners, well, then you can run the ball. Or you should be able to run the ball, and that's going to be the key. If they come out and say, all right, well, we're going to play nickel, and we're going to leave a safety down in the box to help with the run, but we're going to play 4 corners across the back, you better be able to run the ball against that. And that's going to be something that the Aggies have to do. And if they do that, then the Aggies have to produce big plays in the run game because now you got a bunch of corners back there, and the little guys don't really want to tackle, let's be honest. So that's where you got to exploit that. And what I saw from Bobby Petrino and what I've seen from him is the fact that he will do that with his offense. He's got a chop basket that's got great ingredients, but now he is dictating to other teams how they're going to have to try and stop them. And I don't know that other teams can do that. I do think there's some things that have got to clean up a little bit. I think the offensive line still is not perfect, but it's good enough. And if it's good enough, Connor can get the ball off. And if he can get the ball off, that means somebody's going to get open from that group.
Is it good enough to establish the run game, which we saw a little bit of the run game, but not a lot of it? And part of that was the way New Mexico played A&M.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it, David. You hit the last part. It's like it's like an if-then argument. If New Mexico is going to do this, then we have to do this. So New Mexico basically challenged A&M to say, well, we're going to bring the blitz. We're going to bring run blitzes. We're going to twist and bring 5 and 6, and we're going to play man coverage. Okay. But then you're going to get burned. That's just the way it is. So now the challenge becomes, and I've said this often, just because they didn't do it doesn't mean they can't do it. And I think that's got to be the thing. Now it gets more difficult to run the ball this week against Akeem Messidor and Leonard Taylor. That is a challenge. So I'm curious how Miami is going to go about this because Cameron Kitchens is he's a great safety. Their other safety is James Williams. He's like a safety in a linebacker's body and plays like a linebacker. So if they're going to leave him on the field, A&M can exploit him in coverage. You take him off the field, well, they're going to be hurt in the run game, but they got to block those 2 monsters up front. That can be difficult. But just because they didn't do it, I don't think it's that they can't do it. But they got to prove they can do it against those 2 guys. But it doesn't need to be, well, watch us prove it. And then you give up things Miami's given to you. And that's what I loved about Petrino. Like, all right, well, if you're going to keep giving it to me, I'm going to take it. So they kept giving them 5-6 man pressure, playing man behind it with safeties covering all those receivers. Why would you change? Why would you change at that point? I'm not going to be stubborn. You're going to give it to me, I'm going to take it. You give me candy, I'm going to take it, David. And they gave Halloween bags worth of candy to Bobby Petrino.
Johnny, what about Miami's cornerbacks? Is that an area A&M can exploit?
Yes. I mean, they lost DJ Ivey and Tyreek Stevenson from last year. I don't think they've I don't think they've really replaced them. And again, Miami of Ohio was not the team to exploit that. That's not an offense that's going to do it. I mean, they held on for, they were hanging on to the proverbial inner tube off the back of a boat. They were just hanging on for dear life at that point. So I don't think Miami's corners have been tested, but I think they will be this week. And I think they'll get some help from safeties. My thought is Miami's going to go in this and say, all right, you got a bunch of big plays last week. Let's see if you are willing to dink and dunk your way down the field. So I think you'll see selected pressures from Miami. But I think for the most part, what you'll see is probably them play nickel and force A&M to have to run the ball. And in running the ball, have to block Taylor and Mesidor up front. I don't think that means that they're going to, the corners are going to have a walk in the park because they're going to get a bunch of help. But if I'm Miami, I'm sitting there going, man, I can't give up those big plays. I got to let my offense control the ball, and I got to take away the big plays. And I'm going to challenge A&M to go 10, 12 plays a drive and see if they'll do that. Now, I think they can do that. I think they'll definitely do that. I think there's enough experience. I think there's enough ball carriers, and I'm including the receivers in this, after the catch or in the run game that can do some good things. But I think you'll see a different attack. I think you'll see some selected pressures, but I do think you'll see some disguised coverages, not as much man-to-man coverage because their corners are not at a level they were last year with Ivy and Stevenson. So I think you'll see a lot more zone. You'll see a lot more off coverage. You'll see a lot more disguises. And so Connor's got to be good with, all right, they're showing me quarters pre-snap, but boom, they roll to a cover 3 post-snap. So he's got to get his head around a play action, all that, to see what they're doing. And then, most importantly, don't get impatient. Take the profit. Maybe the profit, and this, David, goes to one of the things I'm writing about in my keys to the game. It'll be up at footballtakeover.com. You don't always have to run the ball by turning and handing it off to somebody. You can run the ball with your screen game, with your running backs out in the flat. One thing I noticed in college football this past weekend, more than any other weekend, David, was teams throwing the ball to their running backs out of the backfield more than ever. And just now, they were attacking down the field. Colorado did it a bunch. LSU did on the first play of the game. They're using their backs as receivers and turning them into running backs back into running backs at that point. I think you can do that with this group of running backs. Now, they did a decent job in pass protection, but I think you can get them involved in the passing game as an extension of your run game, or to even be your run game. So if you start dropping everybody in zone, take the profit, get it out to your back. Now you're out in space. Challenge Miami to be good tacklers out in space, and I think you've got a great opportunity to move the football on them and be consistent moving the chain.
Johnny, New Mexico was not a good run team. I thought their quarterback, Dylan Hopkins, did a nice job getting the ball out quickly. That being said, the defensive line, we know they had some issues last year getting to the quarterback, stopping the run. What'd you see in game one?
I mean, New Mexico is it's a tough one. I felt like this, and it wasn't just the front 4, but I felt like the front 6, front 7 was playing faster. In particular, Edgerrin Cooper. I thought Cooper was playing, I went into 2022 thinking I had him in my Harris 100 thinking, man, if I saw in 2021 as a young dude, I see that development in 2022, that's going to be a guy we're talking about. He looked lost last year. He was very slow to read and react. That was not Saturday night. He was not slow to react. He was moving fast to the ball. I don't know that Miami's offensive line is very good at all. They got a young right tackle, true freshman, who's going to be a player, but they're missing Zion Nelson, who's still coming back from injury. He's probably their best player. I think everybody else is average. This is a game that A&M has to eliminate the Miami run game completely. And Miami didn't run it well against Miami, Ohio. But what Miami did to run the ball was they used a lot of tunnel screens, a lot of quick screens and now screens to get the ball to their wide receivers and now make it a space game where their offensive line doesn't have to be an issue. A&M's interior has to turn Miami's offensive line into an issue, if that makes sense. Miami will resort to the short stuff, quick stuff. They got Shannon Dawson, who was Dana Holgerson's offensive coordinator at University of Houston. They use a lot of horizontal stuff, a lot. And that's just an extension of the run game. So that puts Cooper's game really at the forefront because that dude can fly. So he's got to be instrumental in that. I think the front four, albeit the other night, I thought it was good. I feel like with the depth that they can go, especially in a game at Miami, that depth has got to be on point because you got to roll 8-9 deep when you're playing in that humidity, in that heat. And I think that's going to be the best part of this game for A&M is that they can stay fresh up front. Not only stay fresh, the second group may almost be as talented as the first group. And I think you can be multiple with that group. Now, if you get them in long situations, as you did last year, I don't know that they've got the receivers to hurt A&M. And that's going to give, I think, the defensive line for A&M time to get there. Now, they may have to scheme a couple of things up, but I do think they'll have an opportunity to get to the quarterback and be just fine.
Johnny, what about Tyler Van Dyke? A lot of short passes in that game against Miami, Ohio. Is he the quarterback we saw a couple years ago that was a Heisman hopeful? Is he more like he was last year? How does his game kind of work with Shannon Dawson's philosophy?
It's interesting because I don't think it meshes very well. But I'm willing to give Tyler the benefit of the doubt. I like Van Dyke. I think he can make every throw you're supposed to make. He's kind of got that three-quarter arm motion. So, wearing number 9, he kind of looks a little bit like Matt Stafford when he throws it. But a lot of horizontal stuff in that passing game, like you said, Dave. And I don't know if ultimately it's a fit. But if that's the way they want to take profit and move down the field with some of those screens, Colby Young, wide receiver, that's what he took to the house. He caught a screen, broke one tackle, he's gone. That's the way they're going to want to do it. So I don't know if it's a great fit. I know last year when A&M got them in second long, third long, he struggled. And then when he did put the ball in point, his receivers dropped everything. But Restrepo is back, and that helps him. They're probably the most competent receiver. So he'll be the kind of go-to guy for them. But I don't know if it's ultimately a great fit yet. But A&M's got to challenge that. They got to put him on a move. They got to get him in second and third and long situations. And then at that point, it becomes, okay, do you want to rush 3, drop 8, and make him throw into a tight space? Or do you want to bring 5, play some man or play some match, and see if you can't get pressure on him and put him on a move? So it's going to be an interesting watch from that standpoint. I'm not sure that Van Dyke and Dawson mesh, but then again, I think Tyler Van Dyke's a really good quarterback, and I think now he's back healthy. I'm not going to bet against it. I'll say that. So I don't know if it's the great fit, but I won't bet against it.
Last thing for you, Josh DeBerry, his debut. He had a great stat line. What'd you see from him?
Well, I think he's going to end up having a pretty solid test this week, to be honest. And what he does against Miami versus what they do against New Mexico, and I think that's for everybody, David. Right. One of the things – I'll tell you one of the things I don't, dive into too much. I do kind of, but I kind of don't. Week 1 stats, it can be misleading because they're going to be guys that come up with picks, pass breakups, whatever the case might be in week 1, and then it's like, wait, where'd that guy – where'd he go? What's that guy going to do? I think the biggest test for anybody new on the offensive line, what's the run blocking like? Defensively, how are you tackling? I mean, it really comes down to fundamentals. I felt like overall, DeBerry and everybody, I felt like fundamentally speaking, I felt like A&M was in a good spot. I felt like they were in a good spot. So the game was cleaner from that perspective than I've seen A&M, whether it was New Mexico or whomever before. And that, to me, was a good sign. Defense played much faster. And I think that comes in the second year of a DJ Durkin program. And I think everybody can benefit from that.
That is John Harris, FootballTakeover.com. What do you have coming up this week? You're going to do a breakdown of the game against Miami, and what other tidbits can you provide?
Yeah. On my YouTube page at JH Football Takeover. You got to check that out. I've had a lot of Aggies check that out already. And it really wasn't, I didn't go about like, hey, I'm going to talk about the Aggies and being great, but they were just great offensively. And I just watched the half. I didn't even go further beyond that because I saw everything I needed to. and half of the offense. And also, I'm doing my keys to the game over at FootballTakeover.com for A&M and for Miami. So that should be posted sometime whenever my wife can wake up in California and get things up there. She's probably waiting for me to send it to her because I was supposed to send it last night. But it's going up today at FootballTakeover.com. So you need anything on New Mexico, you can get on my YouTube page. For Miami, you can see it on my website.
Johnny, but I didn't ask you. First game, you pumped for your Texans? You think it's going to be an okay season?
Yeah, man. I'm nervous. This is a tough team to get ready for. And I mean, a lot of people are picking them to go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. So yeah, it's, being the Ravens. I kind of wanted the Ravens a little later, but then again, they're breaking a new offense. Lamar has not taken a snap in the preseason. He's not been tackled this year. So, we'll go to Baltimore. Might rain. It's scheduled to rain, so we'll see. But yeah, just pumped to get it going and kind of get in a groove and do all those kind of things. So I appreciate you asking, David.
Thank you, Johnny. Talk to you soon, bro.